Majo John Madden, they call me Juanito in Mexico, where I am right now in Vega de Alator, Veracruz State, Mexico. And I've been back in Mexico for a little over a month, having spent 2 years here, intending to live here forever, and then gotten really sick and went back to the U.S. for 9 months of medical treatment, and like wildly happy to be back. I'm a clinical psychologist by background, and have always been really interested in people, love to hear their stories. Before I left Asheville, I got really preoccupied with video documentation of some of the amazing entrepreneurs in Asheville, which is a town that attracts really, really interesting people. I arrived in Asheville in '04 as a pretty broken guy. After having a pretty illustrious career in psychology and then management consulting, working for several years at high levels at AT&T. In my early 40s, I got pretty seriously broken. The influx of sex abuse memories and a perfect storm of other life crises blew me apart, and I got erroneously diagnosed as having clinical depression and then bipolar disorder, and spent 30 years struggling to get free of that psychiatric concentration camp that I was in there. And on June 26th of 2019, life said, "You suffered long enough, champ. Let's let you free." And I had a huge spiritual experience that I've never really had a depressed day since in the last 6 years, and lived out a lifetime dream of moving to Mexico. And I've done some pretty wonderful things, and I'm on fire for my life. And one of the things I'm on fire for is to continue that process of documenting interesting people. Now, when I arrived on Cozumel Island in June of '24, which I thought was going to be my final destination, partly because there was an old girlfriend there who I knew she was happily married, but I thought she might help me get acquainted with the community. In my excitement to meet with her, I left my phone in the cab and never was able to find it again, and then found out that she absolutely did not want to see me, and I heard from personal friends later that she was happily married. She did not want to see an old boyfriend. So I was kind of blown apart, like, well, why am I here on Cozumel Island then? And I also was kind of affronted by the shadow side of Cozumel, which is all the cruise ship traffic, which kind of in many ways destroys the social fabric of that little island, which is known for being muy tranquilo, very quiet and peaceful compared with the wild hubbub of Playa del Carmen, a half an hour across the bay. I was going to leave. About 10 days into being there, I said, I'm leaving. This is not the place for me. And I had a chance encounter with a very remarkable person that kept me there, for a while anyway. Andrew Xenius, Xenios. If you look him up, you'll find lots of links that show him to be in galleries around the world, and that his primary gallery is in Merida, but he also has a home and studio in Cozumel. But you won't find much. 2 years later, I just checked on Google, and even with Gemini AI, what's the deal? His personal story, which he told me more about in 40 minutes outside of a paper store in Cozumel Island than you can find anywhere online, and Gemini confirms that. His record of being in all these wonderful galleries is not, there's essentially a vacuum in his personal story, which is very exciting, very potentially inspiring. So I said, Andrew, would you be open to me doing a series of short videos about your life and your relationship with your dad, who was Greek immigrant, landed in LA with just a few bucks in his pocket and built a chain of Greek restaurants, very successful, and was an enormously amazing man personally, but none of that story is told anywhere. Would you be willing to let me experiment – 'trying to do some of this? He liked the idea a lot. 2 years later, I just checked on Google, and even with Gemini AI, what's the deal? His record of being in all these wonderful galleries is not, there's essentially a vacuum in his personal story, which is very exciting, very potentially inspiring. So I said, Andrew, would you be open to me doing a series of short videos about your life and your relationship with your dad, who was Greek immigrant, landed in LA with just a few bucks in his pocket and built a chain of Greek restaurants, very successful, and was an enormously amazing man personally, but none of that story is told anywhere. Would you be willing to let me experiment trying to do some of this? He liked the idea a lot. But because some other aspects of my own personal chaos, including not getting a phone for several months, it never happened. But I'm on my way back there now. That's my goal, is to land in the Riviera Maya somewhere, not probably Cozumel, but within striking distance of him. And we're following each other on Instagram. And he's tracking me and I'm tracking him. So I think something could happen. You know, when I first arrived in Asheville, within a week of being there, desperately wanting to reinvent my life, having been enormously suicidal in Chicago, this was the last-ditch attempt, was my move to Asheville. Within a week, I was in a workshop, a public Q&A meeting with a guy named Carlos Lopez, who was a third-generation student of Ramana Maharshi and child psychiatrist at Harvard, one of those big schools out east. And Ramana Maharshi's, what he's known for is saying, don't try to be spiritual, get fascinated about who are you. And if you crack that one, you've got everything. Ramana Maharshi focused especially on the spiritual part of that you're one with everything, that you're a little part of God. And I pretty much got that 6 years ago when I had my big wake-up. But as a psychologist, I'm especially fascinated in a part I don't think he ever talked about, was your unique personal thumbprint. What is it you particularly are meant to contribute? Or I like to sing the song, now that we found love, what are we gonna do with it? So once you get it, who you are spiritually, okay, now who are you personally, and what are you supposed to do with all that love? And I intend to continue doing that with Andrew and some other fascinating people I met in the Riviera Maya, and the people I'm meeting here in Vega de Alator in Veracruz State. And continue to do it with myself, because the process of putting back together how it was that I got crushed and why I needed those 30 years in the wilderness before coming out and being pretty fascinated by, well, God, who the hell are you turning me into anyway, and what is it I'm actually meant to contribute? And that's what I want to bring to the people I have a chance to help. Okay, bye.